Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. Well, don't look now, but New Hampshire's junior senator is about a quarter of the way through her first term in office. Of course, there is still a lot ahead and a lot in front of Senator Maggie Hassan right now, who joins us on this Sunday morning.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me.
We appreciate your time. So to close out the week, we saw President Trump float the idea of bringing Russia back into the G7, the biggest 7 economies in the country, this G7 group. Clearly, Russia is ascendant in international affairs, whether our foreign policy establishment likes that or not. But I'm guessing you're not a fan of this idea.
Well, I am very concerned, really, about President Trump's overall approach and attitude towards Russia. We know that our intelligence agencies came together and said that Russia interfered with our elections. Just recently, the Senate Intelligence Committee, in a bipartisan way, came forward and said they agreed with that assessment. And yet we see President Trump reaching out over and over again to try to accommodate Vladimir Putin and Russia, just at a time when the international community should be standing up to Russia's interference and Russia's overall aggression. So I'm very concerned about this. I think it's really important that the president take a step back, acknowledge Russia's interference with our election. We should be doing everything we can to find out what happened and why, and we should be making sure that all of our election systems throughout the country are protected against further interference. And instead of focusing on that, this administration keeps trying to accommodate Russia at the expense not only of our own security and our own election systems, the bedrock of our democracy, but also at the expense of our allies, and it's very, very concerning.
Yeah, parallel to this closer embrace between the White House and Russia, we see the president saying things like calling out Canada for burning down the White House in the War of 1812. They didn't. And also, jumping into this trade war with our other allies. If there's a strategy here, what do you think it is?
Well, I would like to see a strategy. I think what we're seeing, for instance, in the area of trade, international trade done right is a very important thing for us all to do. And we want to make sure that it not only protects American businesses, but helps create American jobs, strengthens our manufacturing, gives our Granite State businesses opportunities around the globe, while also being true to our values. So making sure we have labor and human rights and environmental protections in these trade agreements. And we need to look at them from time to time on an agreement by agreement basis. But when you see this administration not only really in a haphazard way instigating a trade war, but when you see them using the provision that allows them to refer to a trading partner as a security risk, when they're calling Canada a security risk, that is harmful well beyond the issue of trade. And again, it just seems to be haphazard and reckless, and we are looking for, and all Americans should be looking for, a steady strategic approach to foreign policy generally, and we're not seeing it from this White House.
Has your office identified any business or enterprise in New Hampshire that will benefit from these tariffs or added
well,
levies?
What I'm hearing is the opposite. So I hear from W.H. Bagshaw down in Nashua. They make pins and parts that look like pins for manufacturing entities, and they are already having to assess how these new tariffs from Canada are going to impact them. Similarly, we have concerns about our maple sugar industry because Canada's indicated that they will institute tariffs on maple syrup going over the border. So again, this is very concerning. There didn't appear to be a lot of thought that went behind these actions. And again, when you are calling one of your oldest and most significant and best allies a security risk, it really undermines critical partnerships at a time when we need to be coming together with our allies because we are confronting so many evolving threats.
You had the Department of Homeland Security in front of you for a hearing on counter-terror efforts. This is where the rubber meets the road, really, in terms of keeping the country safe. Do you believe this administration has its eye on the ball when it comes to preventing that next terror attack on our homeland soil?
I think there are many men and women in the Department of Homeland Security who go to work every day trying to keep us safe. And I want all Americans to know, I went down to the border in southern Texas during our last work break, and the men and women of the Border Patrol are working so hard. So I don't want to confuse the hard work and concern and mission of the men and women in the Department of Homeland Security with some concerns I have about the lack of focus that this administration has. One of my concerns is that we should be focused like a laser beam, not only on external threats from terrorism, but we should be looking at the threat of homegrown terrorism as well. And I really haven't seen this administration provide the kind of resources and foundation to the kind of community-based counterterrorism activities that we know are so critical, and that professionals from administrations from both political parties tell us we should be focused on. So that's why I've been pushing the undersecretary who's in charge of the Homeland efforts on counterterrorism to really identify for us what the goals are, what the metrics are, and what they're actually accomplishing. Because while there's been a lot of reorganization and restructuring, what we haven't seen is a real focus on this goal and an ability to report to us what improvements we've actually made.
Speaking about the border, there's been a lot of discussion and even some court activity around these border enforcements we've seen in Woodstock. Do you think that's an effective tool in sort of our immigration policy to be stopping these people on 93?
Well, I certainly think that, again, we have to be able to take measures to secure our borders. For me, the issue is, do we do it in a way that is true to our American values? And do we do it in a way that is also constitutional, not only for federal constitution, but for the state constitution as well? So I will continue to support them if they are operated in a constitutional way. But again, I think it's important not to spend too much effort on just looking at our borders. We also need to be focused on counterterrorism here at home, and we need to be strategic and thoughtful and stick to our American values. And one of the concerns I have, which isn't a concern on the northern border, but on the southern border, is what we're seeing from this administration in terms of separating children from their families. We should not be traumatizing children to punish parents.
Yeah, we've seen, and certainly one of your colleagues, Senator Merkley, was trying to get into one of these facilities and was denied entry. What can the Senate do here if you are opposed to this policy in terms of separating families who cross the border? What can the Senate do to affect any change?
Senator Feinstein actually has a bill on this that we're evaluating right now to say that this is not the policy of the United States. Again, we have to take strong action at the border, but we also need to come together and develop a comprehensive immigration strategy. That's why I was working with members of both parties in this Common Sense Coalition. Senator Shaheen was part of it too. We've been continuing talks to how so that we can find a way to get to that kind of comprehensive immigration reform, protect the dreamers, young people who've known no other home but the United States of America and who contribute so much, but also deal with our border security, deal with some of the policy issues that right now are just causing great consternation and really not making us very effective.
It's on the schedule for now. The president is supposed to meet with the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un. You'll hear of the old adage, only Nixon can go to China. Do you think that somehow President Trump can thread the needle here and will be saying only Trump can meet with the leader of North Korea and pull something off? Are you optimistic at all about this summit?
Well, look, I am deeply, deeply hopeful that we make some progress here. I will be watching like all other Americans. What I think, though, that we need is a level of clear and comprehensive strategy and preparation in going into these talks. And we can't forget that North Korea is a brutal dictatorship. We can't forget that they have reneged on their promises in the past when other leaders from the United States has tried to get to a point where they can reach an agreement, for instance, on nuclear weapons. It is really important that we continue in Congress to develop sanctions and impose sanctions and work with the international community to give North Korea all the incentives we can to denuclearize. And I'll continue to work on that. Again, hopeful that we might make progress here, but I am concerned about the lack of strategy, about the lack of preparation, and I think it's really important that we be clear-eyed about who we're dealing with.
And certainly the Chinese play a role in this. Another item in the news has been a lot of tough talk with China, but then we see the administration accepting this deal with this Chinese technology firm ZTE, which many in Congress have been critical of, considering the allegations the company has faced. What do you think of this deal?
I am very concerned concerned about this deal, and you see bipartisan concern in the Senate about the deal. It looks as if this administration, President Trump, are putting China's economic interests in front of our national security. This isn't just any company. This is a company deeply entwined with the Chinese government. It is really a state-owned company, and so it poses a great security risk to us, and it is inexplicable to me why this administration would put China's economic interests in front of our own security. So I'm looking very closely at the bills that are coming through that would reverse this deal, or the amendments that are coming through that would reverse this deal, and I'm giving them close consideration.
The Senate will have the final say, though?
I think we will have a measure, or what's being discussed right now is whether we will have an amendment on the National Defense Authorization Act, and we will see how that goes. But right now there is strong bipartisan support to reverse this deal, at least in the Senate.